At the end of May, I traveled to Oceana County, Michigan, to dive into the world of asparagus production. It was a true hands-on experience. I explored how researchers are working to improve disease control, test new varieties, techniques, and support asparagus farmers with real-world data. I watched the harvest process up close, from snapping spears in the field to sorting sizes on the packing line. This crop has to be moved quickly and efficiently once it's been picked to get it into grocery stores across the country while it's still fresh. I even got to drive one of these harvesting carts myself and pick some asparagus. As a grain farmer, I harvest a field one time per year. These fields are sometimes being picked multiple times a day. So let's get into everything that I learned. In Michigan, asparagus is hand snapped, so workers on these carts will go up and down the rows and manually break off or snap the spears. Ideally, you want to harvest the spears when they are between 9 and 11 inches. The spears don't emerge out of the ground at the same time, therefore you can't harvest it all at once. In ideal conditions, asparagus can grow up to an inch an hour, which means that you may have to harvest the same field twice in one day. When snapping the asparagus, you want to snap it low to the ground, because when you go to harvest again, if you break the stalk off too high, your knuckles are going to be scraping against old broken pieces that start to feel all hard and woody when the tops have been broken off. So besides trying to pick all the asparagus that's at the right height, workers also need to break off or discard any spears that may be too thin, maybe too curved, or have started to fern out. These boxes that the asparagus is going into are called lugs. The harvest window is roughly between Mother's Day and the 4th of July. In this 6 to 8 week window, a field is picked on average 40 times. And then the farmers will have the asparagus fern out. So basically you just let it grow up and it grows into a fern. Hopping back to Ohio for a minute because I want to explain the life cycle of asparagus before we jump into how it needs to be cooled and packaged and shipped out. So this is my asparagus patch. It is not very large, but this is all gone to fern, if you will. So there's these little berries that are on the asparagus plants. This is just an asparagus stalk that has grown up. This asparagus patch was planted in 2017 when I graduated from college. And you don't pick it those first couple of years. People have kind of different preferences on how much you should pick it on different years, but it was planted. We let it all grow up and fern out. The next season, we let it all fern up. I think I might have picked a couple spears here or there, but you just let it fern out. That kind of grows up, and then it'll die off during winter, and then it'll regrow in the spring. Now, for a commercial asparagus farmer, they will plant a variety. They won't make any money off of it really until like year 3. And then you'll keep it in production for like 10 to 20 years, depending on the variety, depending on the health of it, a bunch of factors. So it is a huge commitment when you are picking a variety, because you are gonna have that asparagus in that field for a really long time. So comparatively to my corn right now, the asparagus ferns are just about the same height. Okay, back to Michigan. So I went to Golden Stalk Farms, where I met with a bunch of growers and learned about the hydrocooling system they use for asparagus. Once asparagus starts growing out of the ground, you are on a tight schedule, because you need to pick this stuff quickly. And then once it's been picked, if you keep it out in the hot, humid temperatures, it's going to start to wilt. So basically, you have to take that asparagus and you need to cool it down. I'm really oversimplifying this process. Basically, you just take cold water and you run over the asparagus and you cool it down. And then you keep it in like refrigerated rooms so that it's cold for processing and being shipped across the country. I got to see more hydrocooling and how asparagus is packaged at American Asparagus and Apple. Farmers will drop their asparagus off to be hydrocooled, packaged, and shipped here. Workers laid the asparagus out and it gets cut to the same length by a machine. Workers are also making sure that the asparagus is a uniform size diameter, and then they bundle it up with rubber bands. And the portion of the spear that is cut off will be fed to livestock. This processing area is kept cool so that the asparagus stays chilled. While a majority of this work has to be hands-on, there are a couple robots involved. Once it has been sorted and packaged up, it is shipped out all over the country for you to buy in grocery stores. I got to chat with the folks who head up the Asparagus Research Farm. At the research farm, they are testing out different farming practices that could be implemented, such as drip irrigation. They are also working on combating diseases. One in particular that is a concern is called purple spot. Now, while it is perfectly harmless to eat asparagus that has purple spot on it, the large retailers don't want to buy it this way because they want to be selling a very uniform crop.
They lay all the asparagus on the belt. It all runs down here. It all gets shuffled up and then shuffled back down, so it's all uniform on the belt. There's 2 saw blades in here that'll cut the butt ends so they're all at the same length. The tips or the spears will fall onto these cups. Once they fall onto these cups, this is where the weight is taken. It comes in here where there's cameras, and this is where it's going to take the measurements of the diameter. It's going to take the length, and then it's also going to take the S curvature of it. So asparagus will kind of curve with the sun.
Okay.
You want straight stalks in the market. And then this right here is a laser. So
Okay.
The laser is what's going to shoot into the tip and assess the tip quality, and then it's going to give it a percentage. And based on that percentage is what's going to grade it for as that tip. We take every spear of every harvest of every day, goes through this machine, and all this data is recorded and then sent to campus, and a researcher on campus then compiles all this data, sorted by size, whether it's small, standard, large, or jumbo. It's dropped into each corresponding tip.
And then this was probably the funnest part of the trip. I got to run one of these carts. Now, this was just a single person cart. You use one of your feet to steer the direction and the other one to give her the gas. It feels kind of like you're on a go-kart, but you are going through, you're trying to think about steering, you're trying to think about how fast you're going, and then you're also picking asparagus that you think is the right height. And I don't know, it's a lot, but it was really fun to do. Now, in the commercial fields, these carts will be 5 to 7 person, and you'll have the most experienced person in the middle operating the speed and the direction while everyone else is just picking. But you can only go as fast as your slowest picker.
Think, Zoe, 1 through 10.
9. And it needs a little salt. Because this is not that, I don't think.
You did pretty good though.
Some of these
Yeah.
are so
She's
short.
the best.
Hey, yeah.
That,
I've never
I
done
could
it
do that for a
before.
couple hours.
Yeah.
I will definitely have more of an appreciation for the amount of labor that takes to get asparagus from the field and into the grocery store. Okay, and the last thing that I want to touch on before we wrap up this video is on the farm workers. So here in Ohio on my grain farm, we can harvest a couple thousand acres with 4 or 5 people, just because we have large tractors that can cover large amounts of area rather quickly. But with hands-on produce, fruits, vegetables, stuff that has to be picked manually, a lot of these farmers are relying on H-2A workers. So this is a program where these people will come into the United States for a certain amount of months. They will be provided with a steady paycheck. They will get housing, transportation, meals, or access to places to cook food. There's a lot of guidelines making sure that this program is mutually beneficial to the farm owners and the farm workers. I'm sure there are a lot of farmers on here that would like to answer any questions you have about the H-2A program, but there are people who are more qualified to talk about this than me. But what I can say is that I know that these farmers are very, very grateful for this program and this workforce that they can utilize. Thank you so much to the growers out in Michigan for having me at your operations during a very busy season. I know it can be really hectic, and the last thing you want to do is stop what you're doing in the middle of the day to explain to some girl from Ohio what you're doing on your operations. But I really appreciate it. I really appreciate the folks at Michigan Asparagus for having me out and teaching me about this really cool crop. If you like videos like this, I did one a little while back on sweet potato production in North Carolina. Like, comment, share, subscribe, do all those things so that I can have cool opportunities like this again in the future to bring back to you guys.